This is a palm fruit. It is used to produce an oil that is found in almost everything. Instant noodles, shampoos, biscuits, chocolates, lipsticks, and even your ice cream have one common ingredient: palm oil. And if you see any of these in your products, palm oil has been used in it. Indonesia and Malaysia account for nearly 84% of the global palm oil production. India is the second largest palm oil consumer in the world. 96% of its consumption is import dependent. Last year alone, it accounted for 21.9% of the global oil trade, making it the largest palm oil importer in the world. And palm oil's popularity doesn't seem to be dropping. In the past 2 decades, its consumption increased by a whopping 230%. This, however, comes at a huge price. It leads to deforestation and exploitation of labor, which is termed by environmental groups as dirty palm oil. The EU and UK recognize its adverse effects and are distancing themselves from the dirty palm oil.
Almost as much in carbon emissions as fossil fuels. I welcome the ban on palm oil for fuel.
On the other hand, India is encouraging palm oil cultivation to be self-reliant. So, how dirty is India's palm oil? In the mid-80s, India's edible oil consumption was largely dependent on domestically grown oilseeds like sunflower, mustard, and peanut, and the country was almost on the verge of becoming self-reliant. This period is also known as the Yellow Revolution. But soon after the economic liberalization in the early 1990s, when India opened its gates to the global market, it began importing oil to meet its domestic needs. The import largely consisted of soybean, sunflower, and palm. Once a self-reliant country, India now turned into an import-dependent country.
Most of the palm oil that you get in Indian markets, whether it's a branded product or whether it's unbranded palm oil that you get in the ration shops and in the provision stores and so on, we have very little idea of where it comes from. Most of the palm oil is imported into the country without clear traceability. And part of the reason is there's not much awareness in India about the environmental effects of palm oil. I had worked in Mizoram around 20 years ago when I did a study. In 2014 and 15, I had an opportunity to revisit Dampa after a span of 20 years. And at that time, it struck me that the landscape around Dampa has changed significantly in one respect. And that is the sudden proliferation of oil palm cultivation in that region.
This is Dampa Reserve in 2011, this in 2016, and now this in 2019. What is clearly visible is how oil palm cultivation has taken over a huge piece of land slowly over the years. Despite knowing its environmental impact, the Indian government has been increasingly trying to expand the area under palm oil cultivation by luring farmers through attractive subsidies, especially in the northeastern states.
हमारे नॉर्थ ईस्ट में किसान अगर पामोलिन की खेती पर चले जाएं, तो देश को और नॉर्थ ईस्ट को और वहां के किसानों को बहुत बड़ी मदद मिल सकती है.
But this rapid push for oil palm has started to affect the environment as well as the farmers. After an oil palm is grown, it takes almost 5 years for it to start giving palm fruits which can be used to produce oil. And within a time span of 25 years, the entire plantation becomes useless and farmers have to uproot it and again wait for 5 years for it to start generating income again. This uprooting of palm oil causes deforestation and in the long run hurts small farmers whose lands turn barren.
The definition of small holders in Malaysia and Indonesia is different. They are talking about 50 acres or something like that. And seeing the Indian social reality with farmers and smallholders having 2 and 3 acres. So to get 1,000 acres, we will need to deal with a whole lot of people and farming communities to arrive at the kind of viability situation to establish a plant.
The deforestation in turn risks the habitat of various species like the orangutan, pygmy elephant and Sumatran rhino in Indonesia and Malaysia.
That if you look at forest birds for the same kind of sampling effort, we found only 10 species in oil palm, whereas for the same effort, we found close to 50 bird species in the June landscape.
We heard it's a water demanding crop. You will find in Mizoram, it's very bizarre that even the Watershed Development Authority gives money to divert water from streams to irrigate oil palm. So people get money to set up water tanks and they divert water from streams and to feed their oil palm trees, and the streams run dry.
Water problem is, however, not unique to Mizoram. It is also drying up groundwater in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. It requires up to 80 gallons of water per day compared to coconut, which requires 13 gallons per day.
You cannot produce something for which you don't have the natural condition. Our yields have consistently been something like 1.6 metric tons an annum. Malaysian yields are 6 metric tons an annum. So because of the rain, because of the soil conditions, because they are more conducive, those conditions are more conducive to producing a crop like that, the kind of states we targeted for palm oil, especially Telangana, Andhra Pradesh heads, and the northeastern states, Tamil Nadu, Chhattisgarh, these are all Odisha. All these states, in some way or the other, are water deficient.
But unaware of what they're getting into, farmers end up paying a heavy price for it. Many big companies have signed MOUs with the government for refining and marketing palm oil in these fields.
Farmer who is sort of attracted by the subsidy and converts from jhum to oil palm is then forced to sell to particular corporate companies, and is kind of locked into that by the system that is being promoted now in Northeast India, which more or less serves captive districts on a platter to some of these corporate companies.
In fact, trouble with the system, many of them are now uprooting the plants.
People who are lured into it due to the subsidies, because they could not have water even for rice or millets, but who then come back to palm oil, which needs much more water. There have also been farmers in Tirsi district itself who have been trying to uproot the palms they've planted. They didn't want it, and they wanted to go back to cultivation of their usual crops.
In a race to become self-sufficient, India is putting its farmers and environment at risk. This project may end up doing more harm than good.